I am an intermediate fan. I saw the first two Jeepers Creepers. I like them a lot. Obviously, the first one's excellent, but then it started to get slowly diluted. I haven't revisited the original films in a while. I will add a proviso at the end in terms of recommending the first two. But now let's get into Reborn. As the name implies, starts the whole thing over, starting fresh. The sequels don't really matter. How do they do with their version of Jeepers Creepers? Two words: not good. I would say it's bad, legitimately bad, but there are some few things that redeem it. Some of the people have been very harsh on this, giving it even a 0 out of 10. I don't think, even being harsh, you would give it a 1 out of 10. You could. You could definitely hone in on the weak parts, because there are many. I'm going to be a little bit more generous with my grade, though when I give it, people will be shocked and say, that's generous? Yeah, that's generous, because you probably could give it a 1 out of 10 for many good reasons. So what is occurring? Well, it starts off good with a lot of homage and a lot of callbacks to the original, and you think they're going to go down the original story, but no, it starts diverging. And so the setup is interesting for a little bit, but when we settle in with the main characters and the main story, things basically start to just devolve. It gets really silly and stupid. It doesn't really hold up. And there are just so many moments that are laugh out crazy and stupid that you're like, is it intentional? Is it a parody? I don't know. And there are a few good things like the performances, and some of the ideas are intriguing. And there are tons, and I mean tons of callbacks and tons of allusions, tons of Easter eggs, but not even to the Jeepers Creepers film franchise. They have Easter eggs for Stephen King, Easter eggs for Halloween. There's a lot of Halloween in this. There's a lot of Halloween. I could sense this is basically Curse of Michael Myers, but their version. A lot of Friday the 13th, even Nightmare on Elm Street. So tons of Easter eggs if you're a horror fan or Stephen King fan. But the main story itself is kind of really lacking. Basically, we just have a couple. For whatever reason, they go down to the south, and one thing leads to another, and they go to a place where, guess who is residing? The creeper, and he starts creeping. But he doesn't act like the creeper from the other movies. He's not as terrifying. He looks powerful, and he is powerful, but he's basically just a tall guy in a trench coat who has kind of bad makeup. He doesn't feel like a real monster or a inhuman thing. He just looks like a tall guy with a trench coat, and that's about it. Some shots of him are interesting and amazing. He does look terrifying in a few places, but for the most part, he's not acting in character. He acts more like Jason Voorhees, even Freddy Krueger. He just seems to enjoy stalking and killing. But if you know the Creeper, his main thing is eating people. He doesn't seem to be concerned with stalking, but now he is concerned with stalking. And he's not stupid, he has some kind of intelligence, but his plan is just bat crazy, and he just does these things that have no follow up. Like, he knocks out power in one scene. You think that's going to lead to something like a big bloodbath or whatever. Nope! They just move on to something else. And they spend a lot of time in this one area and think, okay, this is where the action is happening. Nope, they just switch to another area, and you're like, but the one fatal flaw in this that really dominates is the CGI. There is so much CGI in this, and this is a very low budget film. And it's really weird because the opening shots really do a good job mixing special effects and practical, but from then on, massive amounts of CGI blood all over the place. Things are CGI'd when they don't need to be, CGI birds, CGI backgrounds. I even think some cars were CGI. It's just CGI, 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 and it is terrible. Even they didn't have enough time or enough money. It looks really jarring. It's pretty obvious. And combined with the weak makeup and costume with the creeper, feels very, very low rent, like a fan film, but without the passion or even creativity, because it still feels, despite its very low budget, very corporate. You can kind of feel like the studio wanted just certain things inserted for the superhero audience. Here's something for the horror audience. Here's something for the Stephen King audience. Here's something for the hardcore Jeepers Creepers audience. It just felt tonally all over the place. There were only a few moments of genuine horror, and those do work and they are good. Probably the one actor who really stood out is Ocean. She was really good. She's intriguing. The other female actress who's the lead protagonist is okay, but then she does certain things at the very end which really strain credibility. Like, she just has these abilities to hurt the creeper, which are just like insane. It doesn't feel like the creeper of old, who was just so dominant and so frightening and scary. Just his physical movements can really frighten you. Here it's like, he seems much more pathetic, but they're still running from him. But you're like, why? He looks human. Really weak all around. The characters are not very well developed. We have a lot of stereotypes like, oh, that guy is the old guy who's paranoid. We know what he's going to do. We have the young naive girl who's really into science. She doesn't believe in superstition. We know what's going to happen there. We have even the twists are so predictable. It doesn't have suspense. They don't build up moments properly. There are just some places where the camera movements and the setups don't make a lot of sense. The blocking is weird, running too fast at certain points and running too slow. You can tell things were not prepared properly sometimes, and they're just improvising. And the main actor is not very good. He's just screaming so ridiculously sometimes. I know it's a movie and you should be melodramatic, but it was so overboard. And there are so many things that just bring up questions. Like one shot, I won't spoil what it's full of, but it's a CGI thing. So you think, okay, their clothes should be torn up. There should be blood. They're fine. So it's like, why are you running away from the thing? It's not doing anything to your body. So it's like, it's clearly just fake. This thing is a mess. It seems to have nothing good for it, but there is, some moments with the performances that are strong. There are some places where the suspense is built up properly. There are some genuine shots that seem very well done, very professional, but the vast majority of it just feels very amateurish, very strung together. The callbacks are the strongest things, but there's so many and they're all over the place and they don't really build in with the narrative. They just feel very forced in. They're not cohesive. It's not many good things to say about this. I would have to give it a severe 3 out of 10. I would recommend the first two, but for the people who don't know, Victor, the creator of the Creeper, basically, we know now pretty factually he committed some pretty horrific things with a child. Paying for the first two, I think, is not ethically good. So try to find a way to see the first two, borrow a DVD, go to the library, go to a museum. Again, this is now a classical film, so hopefully you'll find a way to see it without, quote, giving over money to Victor. But yeah, the first one is amazing, excellent. It's a modern classic. This feels so much in decline. I have not seen Jeepers Creepers 3, but apparently people consider that one of the worst things of all time. So this thing is in good company, apparently. This is one of the worst films of the year. It may not be the worst horror film I've ever seen, but it is extremely weak. If you want to pay for it, take your chances. I would say come in with very low expectations. You may get some enjoyment, and you will probably be very entertained, but not in the way I think they intended. It is insanely laughable, cheap, and very poorly made, with only a few redemptive features here and there. And that is Jeepers Creepers Reborn.